people in the audience. We have one card. If anyone else wishes to speak, please get a card. You can come up and speak, but you need to fill out a card. First one is Debbie Klein. Debbie?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your consideration and, of course, this discussion and all of your hard work and the research. I'm here today to answer any further questions you might have, shed some light on some of what's going on right now, talk a little bit about the groundbreaking.
Well, I have a question. Initially, we were talking of 200,000 or something, 200,000. Now you're requesting 500,000. And is that the full cost of the Cath lab, or are we talking about, because before we were just talking about some equipment for it?
No, it is not the full cost of the Cath lab or the equipment, but rather some of my board members had recommended recently that we review the participation of the city, and perhaps the city would like the opportunity to actually name that particular part of the new patient addition. And we thought that this would be a very relevant and very fair way to manage that naming. And that's why we made the proposal of 500,000.
Any other questions?
Could I just follow up on that? So for $500,000, tell us what we get.
A lot of signage and a lot of recognition, and people walking in every day and recognizing that the city of Camarillo is supporting one of the most important resources in the hospital, a part of the hospital that, as we have discussed, will save lives. There's no question. Having a cath lab, the ability to detect and diagnose all heart ailments and treat many of them. We will not be performing open heart surgery, but we will be doing a myriad of additional very necessary and very important procedures. And having a cath lab in the community of Camarillo is a very, very big asset and a huge medical resource.
Yeah, I have no question on that. So the whole cath lab costs $2 million, almost $2 million too.
That's the equipment. That's the equipment. I mean,
Right.
building the structure will be certainly significantly more.
But it will be a part of what the whole, we're not supposed to call it a tower anymore. What are you calling it?
The new patient addition.
Okay, and the new addition. So if the city of Camarillo were to put in $500,000, you're not going to name the whole cath lab after the city of Camarillo, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
we were planning on doing that.
Oh. What a deal.
Yes.
We don't have a cath lab here in Camarillo.
No, we don't.
At this point in time, do we? In other words, if anyone has emergency heart situation, they have to be transported to Oxnard.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Took the ride.
Or
I
elsewhere.
went the right.
Okay. All right, any questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Okay. As government goes, we don't always, but there's a prevailing wage issue. And has there been any discussion that you're aware of with the prevailing wage as far as any of the donations from public entities or anything that you've had a conversation with?
No.
Okay.
And I've had many, many conversations. We've been raising funds for this project for quite some time, and I've been on board a little more than a year. And that concern has not come up at all.
And you're aware with what the city attorney said that there's a lot of legal precedence with this. We think we're on firm ground, but there's always that opportunity that it might be, construed differently, and you're aware of that and you're comfortable with that?
And we are actually quite excited about embarking on this process. We do feel that we have a good case.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mike?
It was mentioned earlier that none of the other St. John's new addition, all of it, none of them have had any money given to them by the other cities as grants. Is that true?
No. The city of Oxnard supports a service program every year for elder care.
I don't mean that. I'm talking about construction of the facility. Did
That I don't know.
anyone donate to St. John's in Oxnard for construction of that facility? We were told no. On any of them? Okay. I'm just curious. It kind of makes me think about the university. We give money, and other certain cities don't, to help them too.
Well, we give money for scholarships. We don't give money to the university for operations.
I understand that, but we give money
Or
for the
construction.
university for programs, and no one else does. And so I was just curious, because I heard that and went, but no one's contributed in Oxnard to St. John's? Unbelievable. Okay.
May I ask her one more question? Aren't you about to embark on some additions in Oxnard as well?
We are working on plans to remodel the emergency department at our regional hospital in Oxnard. Yes,
So Oxnard would have the opportunity then to join in.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I think we have the question pretty well lined out. Any questions of Ms. Klein? Thank you very much.
Please join us for the groundbreaking on September 24th, 3:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Okay.
One of the things you might,
Gentleman looked like he was going to get up and speak
Do
to
you
you.
want to say something? Or? Okay. All right. right.
some discussion you might want to have before you get to the suggested action would be whether or not you want to include in the grant agreement the letter to the Department of Industrial Relations, whether you want it to be a reimbursable grant and whether you want to specify the equipment. So we could have that discussion as you go through each of the suggested action items, and then you could take action. So I think maybe the easiest way would be to start with the first suggested action, which is setting the grant amount.
Yeah, on page big numeral 5, there's a suggested action which includes 5.
I'll start that one if you want to talk first about the
Yes.
dollar amount, Your Honor. Now that I hear that for $500, or $500, I'm going to say that. That'd really be a deal. $500,000 that the whole lab would be named from the city of Camarillo. I think that is a great opportunity for us. What I would propose, though, I believe you've got a 5-year campaign, that it's not all at once, that we do maybe $100,000 every year, so that it's not all at once. And going along those lines, I'm not sure if we were to do that, whether you'd have to pinpoint it to specific pieces of equipment. But that would be where I'd like to start the discussion at.
I think the whole thing should go for the Cath lab.
Oh, no, I agree in the Cath lab, but not that it's the ultrasound or it's the, whatever, that is just...
But you don't want each piece of equipment named this week. You did last time.
Well, I didn't know they were going to give us the whole thing, because just the equipment alone, what did I say, almost $2 million too, and just
Right.
the equipment.
All right, that's one proposal. Mike?
Knowing that we, like she says, we have 5 years, the idea, it's not so cumbersome to say 500,000 right up front, right now. Okay? And it shoots for a 5-year period, which, of course, doesn't affect our budget as much as it would be in one shot. And they don't need it yet until they're finished, when they start putting the stuff in the lab, in the room. The equipment itself is, what, $2 million something in the room itself. And so if we, I'm glad they're naming it after us if we do this, because that's going to be the biggest chunk up there. But I think that with all the people who have to be taken to the hospital right now in St. John's, and there are a lot, watch the ambulances, because they have to go to the cath lab in the Oxnard. I think it's worth looking at and considering the whole amount over a 5-year period.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the 500,000, and I know in fundraising, it seems to me that if they can get it front-loaded here, it seems to be a little bit, it just kind of sounds good that you've got monies front-loaded. So I was thinking instead of and we can certainly discuss this, instead of the 100,000, we could do 200,000, 200,000, and then 100,000 within 3 years, and that kind of front loads it, and it gets the money rolling in. And it would seem to me that the major donors would kind of look towards the amount of money, the total amount of money, and how fast that the hospital will get it. So that's one thing we can certainly discuss.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with the $500,000, but they're not going to be buying this equipment today.
Nope.
So I think $100,000 a year with the pledge or the agreement or whatever, and they will have our signed agreement that we will give them the rest of the money at $100,000 a year. That's what I'd prefer.
We're good for
It also doesn't take our money out of circulation. I mean, we do earn a little bit of interest and things on that money. So when they're ready to have the money, it'll all be there. And I think that would be fair to them.
I'm going to disagree with the council on this. I think giving it $500,000 up front does two things. First of all, as Kevin said, it energizes the whole giving program and gets people interested in it. Secondly, it's an acknowledgement that the city council and city representing the city of Camarillo wants to see this thing successful and to be built. And thirdly, it basically does what we say we want to do, and that is to get the thing going and be successful with it. So I don't, and when and finally, we will have to take it from the reserves, but we've got reserves. So I think I would like to see us do it at one time, and subject to all the other things we're going to talk about of agreements and everything else.
Bill, one more thing.
Yeah.
I've heard through the grapevine that this coming spring, early spring or winter, we're going to be asked to build a senior center at the Park and Rec. Now that may be coming toward us too. That's a lot more money. So we're going to have to watch what we're doing all at once if we're going to look at that too.
Your Honor, before we leave this subject, perhaps we should ask the hospital or the foundation if it would really make a difference whether it's up front or whether it's the commitment over a 5-year period. And then maybe that will help us decide which way to go.
Okay. Debbie?
Well, so there are very good arguments for all of the different methods. One thing I do want to...
Could you speak a little
Right
closer
into
to the
that-
mic? It's really hard to
Right
hear
into
you.
eat the phone. There you
Okay.
go.
Is this good?
That's much
okay.
better.
I didn't want to kind of blow everybody out of the room either. So one thing I do want to share that we're very excited about in developing this cath lab is that having this most cutting-edge equipment is going to attract the best and the brightest physicians to our hospital. This is something that physicians are really looking for, so I do believe that you're backing a great project. That being said, it is wonderful to have the funding up front. It does give us more flexibility, but I understand there might be some challenges, so we are open and flexible however it works best. And that being said, though, up front is great. We would really appreciate
Always
that.
But the other way is fine too.
We'll go with that.
Could I ask one more question along that line? I'm assuming you're doing in your whole campaign that you're having other pledges so
Yes.
people can pledge over a period of time.
Yes,
So in
yes.
some ways that sets that precedence as well. We're starting that ball rolling as showing that this is what can be done because not everybody can write a check for, in 1 year for
$500,000.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have no problem going either way because I know we can do it, but I think it's maybe showing prudence in the way that we manage our funds. To do.
Maybe we can compromise and say we give two $250,000 contributions in year 1 and 2.
That would work.
Does that work?
Let me ask another question that might help us. When would you actually be purchasing the equipment?
I want to say that the timeline will start in about a year.
So you will actually be buying equipment?
They're going to start laying the groundwork for what they're...
But purchasing is what she's talking about.
Actually writing a check?
Actually writing check to purchase the equipment.
That actual answer I don't have. 2017.
2017. 2 years.
And that will be part of a bond that you're taking out or something? I mean, you're not paying for this whole thing ahead of time in cash.
No.
Dignity Health is helping us with a tremendous amount of this.
Well, I know from experience that buying this state-of-the-art equipment, you have to order it, and it's probably could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years in getting it because it's specially made for every application. So, is that correct?
Yes, please.
Yes, I do. We need
Yeah,
somebody. Yeah.
We have to have all the equipment available and ready for the opening, so that is slated for early of 2018.
Okay.
So the cath lab has to be...
So it could be 2 years or a year and a half or something.
Right.
Okay.
There's currently within the construction project, there's a list generated now of all the medical equipment that's going to go to the materials management folks within Dignity Health. That whole procurement process will be ongoing during this whole construction project, but we need to be ready to see patients once we are open in 2018.
Okay.
Could you state your name for the record?
My name's Rich Montmany. I'm the Vice President for St. John's Pleasant Valley Hospital.
Thank you very much.
Mr. I have a question of
Yes.
the attorney. Obviously, we need a motion on this, but would the motion include the letter, or would we be the cleanest way to kind of do this separately? Or?
I think it'd be best to go individually because I'm not sure which way you're going to go on each item. So since I did have it listed as 6 items, I think one at a time. Also, I wanted to comment on the naming rights issue. That's just recently come to my attention with their August 24th letter. I would have to see what can be done legally to acknowledge the city's contribution. I don't know, for example, that they could call it the City of Camarillo Cath Lab.
Would we be responsible?
Well, I just don't know. And since
Getting in the heart business.
Sponsored by the city.
and that may be sufficient too. I just don't have the answer because I haven't looked at it, but I will. So I would say if you're going to, it sounds from the discussion I've heard so far that the council's leaning towards the 500,000. The only question is how what the increments are going to be, and that you were favorably inclined to this reference to naming rights. I would just say that it's naming rights subject to, review by city attorney of options for that, because it may just be a sponsored by or supported by. There may be some other way to whatever plaque or whatever is planning on being put up in the lab. I'd have to look at it to make sure we're, within the bounds of the law.
Well, I think probably it would be good for you to look at it, but then to have the city council okay it.
Sure.
Your Honor, the city manager's been trying to say something.
Oh, Mr. Mayor and council members, another perspective from a finance operational perspective, when we typically disperse for our grant awardees, we do it on a reimbursement basis. It seems like all the information given that if we followed a reimbursement process, it would work starting as early as 2017. It could be incremental depending upon how they purchase their equipment in stages, and also when they request their reimbursement. They could do so incrementally or they could do so lump sum. But it would help with our financials in terms of our audits, so that it's very clear that we are dispersing a check post purchase, so that we know that it's in line with the grant agreement and it's consistent with what the auditors would be looking for. It's a minor item. It's certainly not a deal maker or a breaker, but it does seem like it lines up with the cash flow we've been talking about.
And that would, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
That's included in one of our conversations here down the line.
That's number 4.
Number 4.
Maybe we could discuss the amount and then go down, instead of trying to lump all discussions together, go down each of these 6 items one by one and not confuse the issue. And I don't know that we need to vote on everything, but if we could come up with an amount and then something else and something else, I think we could get there.
Okay, let's start this way. Is there any objections to considering $500,000 as the net amount that we're talking about, to depending on how we're going to end up dispersing it? Is there any disagreements on that? Okay, we'll move ahead. The next one would be, is there any disagreement that the city attorney should prepare a grant agreement with the foundation and return it to this council for approval?
I think we should.
Everybody agree with that?
Agreed.
Okay. Number 3, direct the city attorney on whether to include a provision in the grant agreement that the city would request a determination from the Department of Industrial Relations regarding prevailing wage and the consequences if the DOR determines the prevailing wages would be required.
I think we should.
Agreed.
Is there any objection to that?
I don't, but I think also in the grant agreement, we need to have, if they were to decide that it would bring about prevailing wage, then what will happen? Because I don't think you'd want us to do it and pay prevailing wage on an $80 million project. So I would hope that you somehow would write in there.
Exactly, that's why I said, and the consequences. The consequences could be that the foundation, if for some reason the DIR came back and said prevailing wages were required, then they would have the opportunity to pass on the grant and decline it.
Okay, that seems to be agreeable. Number 4 is direction to the city attorney on whether to include a provision in the grant agreement that the city would pay the grant as a reimbursement to the foundation after the foundation has purchased the equipment.
Your Honor?
Yes.
We've talked a couple ways, and the city attorney, the city manager said usually things are reimbursements. I can think of one other, what at the time seemed like a request for a large grant, and that was from the Rio Mesa PTA for the high school pool. And I believe we did $10,000 a year for a few years, for 3 years. But I think that was given each year. It was not given as a reimbursement. So that's the only one that comes to my mind where it wasn't as a reimbursement. But I wanted to put it out there.
The skateboard park with the Pleasant Valley Rec, what was that? Do you remember? That was $100,000, I remember.
That was $100,000 for skateboard park.
And I think we just gave that to the
We
Rec
just gave
and
them
Park
one lump
District.
sum.
That may-
Yes.
Perhaps from, again, to the city manager, we're talking about $500,000, or maybe to our finance director. Do you think that would raise a question just to give it? Do you think it'd be better to truly to do it as a reimbursement? And then I guess my question to the hospital would also be, would you be able to buy it and then reimburse it? I'm assuming we have a pretty quick turnaround on our funds. So those are my 2 questions along that line.
Mm-hmm.
I think any of the options are equal, whether it's reimbursement or not, and however you go, payments or cash or lump sum.
The reimbursement would also set the time frame. He says 2 years, year and a half. Who knows? It could be 3 years. But the reimbursement would set that time frame. And they'd be reimbursed at the end of each one of those time frame.
So ask them the question, would you be able to fund it or to buy it, write the check, pay the equipment, then send us the invoice and be reimbursed?
I believe so.
Okay.
All right, what's the pleasure of the council?
Your Honor, I
Okay.
move that we go all 5 points that you're talking about. The reimbursement, the suggested points.
Oh, we were still on the reimbursement.
We're still on
Oh,
the
I thought we were through with
reimbursement. We haven't made a
reimbursement. Sorry about
decision.
But I
And
would-
there are more to come. There's 3 more items to discuss.
I would agree on the reimbursement because it kind of gets it into the compromise time period.
Right.
That we're really now talking 2 or 3 years versus 5. Right? Kind of gets you there.
Yeah.
Any disagreement on that?
There's a couple different ways to look at it. You can certainly do the reimbursement. We're going to wind up paying the money anyhow. So obviously it's going to get built here. So I could go either way. I mean, if you want to wait until do the reimbursement, that's probably a cleaner way, I would think, with the accounting type way to do that. But we can certainly do that.
It's better to be sitting in our fund gathering a little bit of interest than sitting in their fund gathering interest before they buy it all.
The amount of interest.
So business-wise, it's a better
Interest we're getting.
position for us
For us.
to do it this way, reimbursement.
Well, the interest we get is almost
Pretty low.
pretty low.
Uh,
Okay, is that the consensus of the
Yes.
of the council? All right. All right, direction to the city attorney, number 5. Direction to the city attorney on what equipment would be included in the grant agreement. I think it just simply would be the Cath lab
lab.
equipment. I don't think we.
Whatever they buy with the
Whatever they buy
500,000.
with up to 500,000 is what's included.
I agree.
Is that all right?
In the
Now
cath
we're
lab.
at that dollar amount, yes.
Okay. And finally, any other direction we want to give the attorney?
Your Honor, I'll make a motion.
I think we have one more thing on, can we do on 6, though, one more thing?
That's
And it-
any other direction. Oh, you can,
You were going to make a motion on the whole thing. The one thing that the city attorney brought up, though, and I think we need to have it on the record, that we want to make sure we clarify the naming and how it should be done in the best interest of the city and the
And
hospital.
that'll be brought to this council for.
Yeah.
does that need to be in the agreement?
Well, it probably does.
I don't think it needs to be
I
in
don't
the
think it
agreement.
needs to be in the
but
agreement. I
It
think
doesn't
we
need-
to give direction
To the
to
city
it.
attorney.
No, it doesn't need to be in the agreement, but it does, it should be included in the motion. So
Okay.
the motion should include everything that you've identified so far, and then say, and further to direct the city attorney to research the issue of what naming rights or sponsorship would be legally permissible, and to return to the council with that information.
Okay.
Okay,
Now make your motion.
who wants to make a motion?
I would make a motion to provide a grant to Pleasant Valley Hospital Foundation for $500,000 and to direct the city attorney to prepare an agreement for the grant, to direct the city attorney to request a letter from the Department of Industrial Relations as to whether, in their opinion, this would trigger prevailing wage on the entire building project, and to have that part of the agreement that you're writing. To provide this grant as a reimbursement. And this part of the motion is that the grant will be for whatever type of equipment they buy for the grant, the Cath lab. It will just be as part of the money that they use for the purchases. And in addition to that, we would like the city attorney to research any restrictions or any restrictions on naming opportunities for the city, and to bring that back to us as a separate item.
Second.
There was one additional point. In addition to the grant agreement saying that we would seek a letter from the Department of Industrial Relations, the agreement would also describe the consequences if the Department of Industrial Relations determined that
Yes.
prevailing wages would be required.
That's part of the motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, and if not, please vote. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We don't allow
We're
clapping.
looking forward to this new hospital. And,
In case we need it.
It's going to be a
You already
great,
had yours. You're
I've already had my turn, so it's your turn.
great asset to this community. It already is, and this will make it even more. So, thank you for being here. Okay,
all of you.
we move to we miss item